Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. This is Brian Funk. I'm also AfroDJMac, and I'm here with Dan and Pierce from pATCHES. And pATCHES is a website that specializes, I guess you could say, in different sample packs, Ableton Live packs, tutorials, and it's all got a really nice visual aspect. And the techniques and samples and instruments and whatnot are all like super useful stuff that I've really come to enjoy and use a lot in my productions, and it's all presented in a super pleasing visual manner. So I'd like to welcome Dan and Pierce. What's up, guys?
Hello.
Hey.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, it's great to have you. So maybe we can just get the what we did just a few minutes ago. Like, you guys can identify yourselves by your voice with the names so that everyone knows who's who.
Sure. Well, I'm Dan. I write a lot of the tutorials and record for the site.
I'm Pierce, and I do the visuals and sort of creatively consult on pATCHES.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't realize it was a two-man operation. I think you guys are a tad mysterious on the site. It's like it took me a while to know that we had two people behind the scenes here.
Now the mystery's being lifted.
Yeah,
The curtains are revealed.
Oz, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And well, like I've always kind of like Pierce and I do a lot of stuff together, not just the site and different things in music and radio. And I've always kind of thought we're good foils for each other. So maybe part of that transparency is just like we're filling in each other's gaps, and there's not a lot of like deconstructive interference, I guess.
Yeah, we each have our own sort of things we specialize in on pATCHES.
So maybe
That's
it's
really
like
cool.
in Dragon Ball Z when they have the fusion earrings. Maybe on pATCHES it appears to be one person because we like fuse.
Yeah,
really
you
are
guys
one.
help fill it in, and I, as someone that's doing similar work, I've always been like, how the hell are these guys or this person or whoever like doing all these awesome tutorials and all these like great graphics at the same time? Must take forever.
It does. We work side by side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think it's always awesome when you can find somebody that kind of complements you and fills in the parts, maybe like has different strengths than you and can, round it out. It's sort of like the Lennon-McCartney thing.
That's
I always felt like Paul McCartney maybe was like a little more poppy and sometimes cheesy, and John Lennon like kept them cool. And then maybe John Lennon was a little weird and out there, and Paul McCartney kind of kept them, in tune with, you know what I'm saying, right?
That could probably be this relationship. I think you could look at it that way.
Yeah, I guess that ended with them hating those things about each other. So I don't know what's in our future.
Yeah, well,
It's
I
all
think
going to
when
come
you
crashing
listen
down.
right, when you listen to some of the solo stuff, like sometimes you can hear like where maybe the other guy would have helped round it out a little bit.
Yeah,
yeah, definitely.
exactly.
But that's great. It's a fantastic site. I really like it a lot. I'm always happy when something new comes out, and I've, as much as I'm like a hoarder for anytime something comes out, free sample packs or new tutorials and things, I get a lot of use out of your stuff. And there's a lot of things I've downloaded that are on my hard drive that I've never used.
Yeah, I'm the same exact way. And I think like the whole goal of everything is to make it like real life useful to the most amount of people. Because like there's just so many genres, and a big thing with Ableton, I think, is that like it still seems that Ableton sort of is genrefied in some way to like a similar type of like electronic music, but there's so much more you can do with it, and we're trying to like play to the larger audience that isn't fully tapped into yet, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that I hear that a lot with Ableton Live is like, people be like, oh, but I don't make electronic music.
Yeah.
So because I'm always like evangelizing it because I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And, friends of mine that I've like showed it to, at first, the reaction I get a lot is, yeah, but I'm not really into like doing electronic. I'm like, no, and I come from playing guitar and rock bands and everything like that. So,
Yeah.
I don't really think of myself so much as like doing like EDM or anything like that.
Yeah.
I just like the sounds and the capabilities of like manipulating the audio, but I think of myself more like in that like kind of rock and roll songwriter kind of world.
Yeah, I think we've noticed that stigma with Ableton too, because I don't know, like we were talking about this the other day. There does seem to be this reaction of like, oh, I mean, like I'm not going to perform live or I'm not going to make electronic music, but it really is just, I think, the best way to get your hands on the audio and manipulate it. I mean, even at the radio station we work at, we use Ableton as our DAW, as opposed to like Audition or Pro Tools, which would be the industry standard, just because it's not as intuitive for people coming in.
Yeah, and if no one's telling, like, if we start these people who are just now getting into like audio production on Ableton, like it's natural to them. It's normal. Like they don't think like, oh, this is not like a real program for editing audio. They're just like, oh yeah, this makes sense. It's like, and it's colorful. So like people are very about that from the jump. But we also kind of come from that songwriting, sort of like more rock and roll background with like guitars, and like we put people onto Ableton, namely Imperial Manor, who is like sort of an indie rock guy, and he's been producing all his tracks in Ableton, and it's sort of comparable to like Tame Impala sound. So yeah, like a lot of people think you need Pro Tools to make those kind of songs, and it's just frustrating to read gear sluts.
Yeah, and I track and mix folk albums or jazz in Ableton, and it just works really well for that. And maybe part of that is I've just gotten used to the tool, but I'm pretty proficient in Pro Tools too, but it's just not nearly as intuitive to me.
I started on Pro Tools in 2005. It was after I was working with 4-tracks and ADAT machines and all kinds of things before I got the computer. And I got Pro Tools just because it's what you get, right?
Yeah,
sure.
Pro Tools, and it came with Ableton Live like 3 or 4.
Huh.
And
wow.
I do remember looking at it and kind of not really understanding it, and it never really did much with it. But I've found, and I went through Logic and even Digital Performer I liked for a while. And I've found just like a lot of those programs to me seemed more tailored for like if you're going to be like the engineer guy in the studio. But that's not what I'm trying to do. Like I'm trying to just make songs, and it just seemed more like a friendly instrument. Like the studio is now an instrument rather than like this technical thing that I almost have to work against.
Oh
to
yeah.
make music.
I've always like since I got into music, I've always been trying to record music. Like I guess I'm just more interested in recording myself than like I was performing from the jump. So like I think I've always looked at music as like you're saying, like the studio is part of the instrument, and like how you manipulate a recording is sort of the art and like the performance in a way. So Ableton obviously like joins those worlds together.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that when we talk about the studio as an instrument or Ableton as an instrument, I think that would kind of go back to that whole idea of, oh, it has like the clips and session view. Like I almost wish that wasn't by default the thing that comes up first, because I think that turns a lot of people off. Like if they just saw the normal arrangement.
It was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
What is this?
And, like the Beatles famously used the studio as their instrument and found all these creative techniques. And I think even if you are doing something like a rock record or a jazz record, you can still use your DAW as part of the creative process in the same way you would pick up an instrument.
Yeah, that's actually what got me into recording was the Beatles and the idea of the studio as the instrument, and just reading about all the fun they had doing weird things that maybe sometimes they weren't supposed to do.
Yeah, I heard a story of John Lennon wanted to be hung from a rope and have a microphone in the middle of the studio and be swung around the microphone. And I think Jeff Emmerich was like, we could just probably use a Leslie speaker for that same effect, and it'll be just as well.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, they've always had like interesting ways of like communicating the way they wanted to get the sound. I think he, in Tomorrow Never Knows, he told George Martin, I want to sound like the Dalai Lama on a hill, chanting out like something. And like George Martin's like, all right, well, how are we going to do that?
I've seen pictures. I've seen pictures of them recording that, and they just have like all these tape loops in their hands, and they're like feeding them in and out of the tape machine, and kind of they used all those samples manually, which is pretty wild.
Awesome.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the benefits when you get to be the Beatles, and time and money are like not really issues for you.
Yeah.
In those old days. So cool. We have similar upbringings musically.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah. So when did you guys start the site? It's relatively new, or
did you say when?
Yeah.
I think it was last May. I think I just woke up one day and decided that I was going to I was working on some new material and I didn't really know how to promote it. And, there's very limited options for someone who's just starting something, especially as experimental as I was trying to be. And
yeah,
I thought, how could I share out my stuff? And I thought if I made something that's inherently useful for somebody, maybe just on the tangent, they'll also look at my thing. Because there's so many resources out there that people will go and look for. And, it's either frowned upon or highly discouraged or just completely diluted if you post your music in those places. And I think I wanted a way to kind of meet people that would be interested in what I was working on.
I have an interesting anecdote to add to. When I first met Dan, I think the first interactions we had, he'd showed me a folder on his computer called pATCHES, and he was like, someday I'm going to release all these things on the internet that I've been working on. I'm probably going to start some site based on music, but still working it out. And it was probably almost a year later that you started it. So it was like that. It was sort of just waiting to be released, all this stuff sort of coming together.
Kind of brewing for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did always have that intention. I had forgotten about that. But I was making Max patches and Ableton racks, and I thought they'd be really interesting to share out to the internet, and I kind of never got around to it until I started the site.
Yeah, that's cool. It's kind of a similar motivation for me, too, because I did so much of my learning online, especially with DAWs, just through tutorials and stuff. And I found myself, finding certain people that I followed and would always come back to for their work, and I would listen to their music. And even if it was just kind of sprinkled into the tutorial, I'd be listening. And then next thing I knew, I had a few of their albums on my iPod. And it kind of occurred to me I like to write anyway. High school English teacher, and so it's kind of in there. But it just seemed I wanted to document what I was doing and share, and I kind of realized that a lot of the people I was learning a lot from, they weren't necessarily experts at what they were doing. They were just a bit further ahead than I was, and they had more experience. So I wanted to start documenting what I was doing, and I thought too it was a cool way to kind of slip your music in there. And just you're talking about the process and stuff, but you're also still doing what you're working on. And I was always sort of as I was watching all these tutorials, I was like, man, I should be keeping a notebook of all of these things that I can do when I'm working on a production. And then it occurred to me, well, I do a blog, and then put it out there. And I think what you've said is really true, that you give people not just your music, here's my music, but here's something useful to go with it that might help you as well.
Right. And
because there's so much music now that's saturation. It's a great way to stand out.
Yeah, and Pierce and I just put out an album, and we took all the songs he wrote and all the sounds that we put into the album, we released as a sample pack. And it's just one extra layer, something that makes it worth checking out or is inherently useful to you.
Yeah, we're seeing the expanded idea of pATCHES, it's growing into we described it sort of like a label where they're with the tutorials, the other side of it is we're releasing music from artists that we really care about, and sort of also releasing that with a sample pack and sort of the pATCHES fashion, and sort of expanding what a modern label could be, or a modern way of publishing music.
Yeah, I guess it's like a DVD release where you have the bonus features and the commentaries. It's maybe a sample pack, maybe the artist writes a manifesto for the site or contributes in some other way that, again, is just inherently useful for people that might already be interested in the music.
Right, and I always loved that when even if it was in like the liner notes of the album, where they kind of talk about like the making of it or some of the process, and how they did certain things was always just really fun. And I was talking to somebody for this show actually. I think it might have been Jason Timothy, who does musicsoftwaretraining.com. I'm sorry if I'm misappropriating this, but just like so much of the idea of like music and the songs is like kind of like the soundtrack to like an artist's story, and like the story is so important. Like we get attached to that, and the music almost just kind of comes along with it. Maybe that's like the fun of the Beatles for me so much was like just learning their story and what they went through and like all the adventures and like creative things they went through. A lot of bands are like that.
Right.
But it's nice to have that where like now when you hear the music, you've also got these like characters involved and you're like thinking about them in all these different ways, who played what and where the inspirations came from and the stories behind the songs.
I guess that's what the Monkees are trying to capitalize on.
Having the story. I was just thinking a modern a modern version of that I've been thinking about a lot lately is Jai Paul from England, and his album was leaked I think in 2013, and like he hasn't put out music since then. Like the whole story behind it is that his laptop was stolen, then all these songs like were leaked into this album that wasn't like intended to be an album, and sort of like that being the story, and like then like the songs kind of sounding like they were leaked demos from a laptop, but it's still being very like a fresh sound and like very influential, and it's on like the Pitchfork Top 100 albums of the past decade or something, like just off this leaked album. Like that sort of story is kind of like a modern sort of equivalent where like it really matches the sound. And I don't know, I've been thinking about that story a lot lately because it's been so long since that came out, and it's been very inspiring.
That's like cool, like almost like a folklore to it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like internet folklore, electronic music folklore.
What was the name of that artist? I'm not familiar with that.
Jai Paul, it's spelled like Jaipaul, and he also like his brother put out some music recently. His name's AK Paul, and they have some like mysterious X-Men type internet thing called the Paul Institute, where like if you sign up, they give you a code word, and they're like, "We'll call on you." It's eventually. It's really crazy stuff they're doing. I'm not like sure what's going on, but it's pretty cool. They're sort of building their own story, like using the internet and the hype that they've
that's
made.
cool. It's like a legend, and it gives the music like this different perspective when you listen to it.
Yeah, totally.
I think like Bob Dylan's kind of famous for like kind of fabricating his story a little bit just to make it more fascinating.
Yeah, but like when you're a figure, like it makes sense to sort of be bigger than life.
Yeah, have that like mystery. I saw a band. It was like one of my favorite bands too. And like they're on stage, they're like rock stars. Like it's just larger than life. And then the in between the song banter. Hey, how you doing tonight, everybody?
Oh yeah.
It just like brought them down to earth almost a little too much, and it was just kind of like, oh, these are just dudes,
Yeah.
Whereas like when they're playing, you're like, wow, like it's like they've got superpowers.
Yeah, you want to like suspend your belief a little bit.
Yeah,
they kind of need to play into that.
I always loved that, like the rock star thing, where it's like these guys are just like, something else. Like they came out of like the heavens or hell, probably more accurately. I saw Stone Temple Pilots a couple years back when Scott Weiland was still in the band and was relatively healthy. And it was a pretty small venue here on Long Island. And I was just blown away, like with their presence and like it was just undeniable. Like you were looking at a bunch of rock stars.
I think, I saw them too, probably on a similar tour. And I remember
Probably
it being
around 2012.
Yeah. I remember it being very big.
Yeah.
Like a big look, a big feel.
Yeah, it was just a fun feeling. You just felt like you were in the presence of like something way bigger. And they were one of my favorite bands when I was younger. Always loved their music. So it was,
me too.
I'm so happy I got to see that.
I guess you're right. Like the whole larger than life aspect of rock music and the like legendary stories you would hear about bands, and you watch a movie like Almost Famous, and some of the stuff that is like written in there is just too crazy to believe. But then you hear some of these stories of like Led Zeppelin or like Iron Maiden, and it's like they went even further. So
right, yeah.
I think that really does add to the experience of listening to the music.
Yeah. What is it? The reality is stranger than fiction kind of thing. I can remember like Scott Weiland was a good example. I mean, it's so sad how it ended for him, but you know, like his life was just crazy, and like you'd hear about it in and out of jail and all the kinds of things he went through. And I just remember seeing an interview with him at one point, and he's like, listen, you know, pardon my language, but he's like, I'm a fucking rock star. He's like, this is what I do. Like, you know, and you're just like, thing. Damn, like he's owning it.
He's just owning it.
Yeah. I mean, so sad, you know, how it ended for him.
Yeah.
But, you know, he definitely was just special, you know, just an amazing performer, amazing singer, songwriter, and everything. But that whole like larger than life thing is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know, to have that element. So let's see. So thanks by the way for including me on the manifestos part on Patches. Patches.zone. I don't think I said that yet. Patches.zone is the site we keep talking about that these guys run. But yeah, thanks for including me on that manifestos. There's some really nice discussions about like, you know, music and some of the philosophical stuff that I'm really into myself. Like creativity and like what that all means and where it comes from. And so yeah, that was some cool stuff.
The manifestos are actually they're gonna be sort of reinvigorated. Dan had a new idea for sort of the format.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to continue to work on them as they are. I just found a lot of the people I would contact are just too busy to sit down and write an essay. But I'm kind of taking inspiration from your podcast because I've really enjoyed this and listening to yours. I might want to do something kind of audio style like this, but where people have a chance to share those philosophies and ideas, but in a much quicker and more accessible way.
I'm finding it really, really nice to sit down and talk to people, and even the episodes when I just sort of have something on my mind and just talk. It's I mean, this is, I guess, going back to like Plato and Socrates, you know, like the idea that we do so much learning through discussion and conversation. And it's so true. Just getting your thoughts out and then just hearing like other people and their interpretations and their experiences. There's so much to learn through storytelling and just kind of racking each other's brain in this sort of uninterrupted amount of time.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, you know, like this day and age, people are so distracted by so many things. There's always a screen, there's always a sound, there's always someone popping in or something jumping in front of you. And it's hard to like have like a solid period of time where you just can let conversation happen.
Yeah. Well, I think like you have a lot of like a one-way interaction with the internet. Like you see all these things and like kind of relating it to learning and like looking at tutorials. Like a lot of time that's just like a one-way street.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But like, yeah, when, like talking to people, learning, like really like I've learned the most like having extended sessions where like you're getting an actual real interaction, like a back and forth. Like it's a lot more conducive. And maybe in a way that's like a part of like sort of like putting something out and then giving like someone else something. Like if you give someone a sample pack based on your music, that's kind of like an interaction that's happening. Like they're getting something and they're making more with it. They can send it back to you and be like, hey, I made this. Like a few people have sent me songs they've made of like samples. Like occasionally, like they sent Patches songs they've made like using Patch samples. I think that's like an interesting sort of like way to not just go one way with learning or spreading ideas.
Yeah, and it's always really gratifying to hear stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
Definitely motivating.
mm-hmm. And it's the way
Yeah.
it's like a digital conversation of music. Man,
It is. It's cool. I've had that experience, and I'm always so excited when people send me stuff that they've used any of my sounds with, and just it's fun to like have that like feeling like you somehow had a hand in it,
yeah.
and
You
then
touched
also just to hear how it gets like reinterpreted into something totally different.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like maybe
It's-
somewhere in some top 40 hit there is a Patches snap. We don't know. But it
Yeah,
could be.
you wonder, right? Because
Mhm.
I'm sure a majority of the people using your sounds aren't telling you.
Yeah, exactly.
But
But
they're
it's a
just,
conversation
get
nonetheless.
put in.
I think that's part of
So-
the fun of it, though.
Oh yeah, you can always guess.
Yeah, right. Well, I actually had an experience. A friend of mine does live sound, and he was doing sound. EPROM was the guy. Just in his music, my friend recognized some of the little samples that I had done and asked him, and it turned out, yeah, those were some of my sounds
Whoa.
in his
Oh wow,
live
that's
set.
crazy. That's
And it
awesome.
was just, yeah, it was awesome. So I wrote him an email. I was like, hey, man, that's so cool. My friend told me.
That's
And,
awesome.
That's so cool.
and I thought it was crazy that my buddy recognized it
Hmm.
because I guess I used some of those in my live show, and he's been hearing me play. And then he's like, wait a minute, what is that?
That's crazy. That's awesome.
So, yeah, that was like one of the cooler times. It's because I had nothing to do with it. It's
Yeah.
just,
Well, all these files are like floating around the internet. It's like, because we see how many times they get downloaded, but like we share so many files just between our friends that it's kind of like, I imagine other people do the same thing. So it's like these things just
Yeah.
travel really far.
yeah. I'd love to know like what the there's like the family tree of sounds like everyone's
if you could,
putting
like,
out and like
Visualize it,
interconnectivity.
spreading out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like just doing the same thing for like the 808 sample and drawing out a family tree for that would be really interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like
Like
how
the-
it diverges.
The Kevin Bacon game of
The degrees of
audio.
separation
Yeah.
from the original 808.
Right. Yeah, like how far are we all from each other? I bet we're really close. Yeah, you did the manifesto too with Ethan Hine, which I was
Right,
excited
yeah.
about because I did a presentation with him one time in New York City, where he was talking about teaching music and guitar with Ableton Live, and it was at the now no longer there, now defunct. Oh my God, I can't think of the name right now. Drawing a blank. It's like the Apple store, TechServe.
TechServe.
Yeah, it was just this big kind of computer store, and kind of like an Apple certified place, I think. Really awesome. They used to do like various like groups, meetings, and lots of educational stuff.
That's cool.
And Hank Shockley of the Bomb Squad from Public Enemy.
Oh whoa.
He what a cool guy he is, and he would run like these user groups, and I did a couple with him.
That's super.
And that's that guy, like you can just understand why he has gotten as far as he has
Yeah.
just by his enthusiasm level. And he's just so excited, so encouraging. Really fun guy to work with, and you just see him, he's like, guys, it's about community, it's about talking, talk to each other, like you're all here, you're all into the same thing, and like don't just stand there, like that guy next to you has got the same interests as you, the girl over there, she's wants to know about the same things you want. He's just creates such a great community.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
And
inspiring.
TechServe was like he's a fun guy to be around if you want to like get inspired. Does a lot of cool stuff. And just that energy though is so contagious. I
Yeah.
remember Lou Reed talking about energy once being contagious, enthusiasm being contagious, and that's something that really stuck with me Because, I mean, you know the feeling, I'm sure, when like a person walks in the room and they're having a bad day and they're like, oh,
Oh yeah.
and it like,
You immediately know.
yeah, it goes right through you. But
Mhm.
same thing when someone comes in the room and they're just feeling good. Like it makes you feel better.
Yeah, definitely. We just went to an audio engineering summit a couple weeks ago, and one of the biggest takeaways was there were all these Grammy-winning producers there, and they would talk about how like the most important skill is your social skill. Like it doesn't matter how good you are at the technical side of things and working in Pro Tools or Ableton. It comes down to, at the end of the day, like, can you hang?
Yeah.
That's what they would say. Or like,
And you're like, do I want to spend all these hours with you? Like, are you gonna be fun? And like they all sort of like the main thing that they all shared was like they were all generally just like really cool, outgoing people. And it made a lot of sense. And it's like people discount how interactive these things are.
yeah, there was this producer out of Nashville, and he always talked about how important food is. Like most of his advice had to do with food. He'd be like, you never want to schedule something before lunch because then people are hungry. They can't work when they're hungry. So I always start my sessions around 1. We go till like 6, take an early dinner. Even if you're not hungry, you got to go out.
Early dinner had like old people.
Yeah. That guy was
Early bird
really
special.
funny.
They'd really thought about like the interactions they had with people and like even the environment that you're in, and like creating like a community, like you're saying.
Yeah, my job, like where I teach, there's a lot of like young people coming into teaching out of college and they're looking for jobs. And one of the biggest pieces of advice I always give them is like, be nice to people, be friendly, smile, say hello. When I started, I was what they call a leave replacement. One of the teachers was having a baby and they needed someone to fill in. And I'm right place, right time, just got lucky. And I got picked to be this person. And when I was there, I say hi, smile at everyone in the hallway. If I had questions, I would ask. And a lot of times I think people feel when they ask questions, they're saying that they don't know something. And I guess on some level you're saying, yeah, I don't know this. But especially when you're new at something, you're not expected to know everything.
Oh yeah.
And and it's a big turnoff to some of the veterans when the young people come out of college and act like they know it all.
Yeah.
Without any experience. And when you ask for help, you're really saying like, I care, I want to get better. And what you're also doing is you're saying, I think you know how to do this, and I respect your experience. And then people like that too. So when I was going for the actual position of the job, I had a lot of people kind of vouch for me and say I was a great teacher, and they never saw me teach 1 second in a classroom at all. I mean, I could have been in there like just like giving out donuts and I don't know, doing whatever in my classroom, breakdancing all period. And like they were saying I was a good teacher. And I always try to tell like the new people, like, keep in mind, like when they're looking to hire somebody, they're picking a person that they're going to have to look at every day and interact with every day. Like, do you want to be around this person all the time? That's a big consideration.
Yeah.
Do you want to see them every day? And like you guys said, like the social aspect matters, because if you're doing your work around a person you can't stand being around, it's not enjoyable.
It's almost the number one thing. No one wants to be around people they hate. I actively avoid those people. So
yeah, and I think it's true. Everything you said is really applicable to music, from everywhere from like that Grammy level, or like if you're doing it in your bedroom with people in your community.
Yeah,
what
I've read it too
grade
in
do
a
you
book.
teach, actually? I was going to ask.
teach 9th and 12th this year. It's high school.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, so I get like the new high school students and the kids that are going out, which is kind of fun to see the different perspectives on life.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's a pretty sharp difference.
Oh, it is. I mean, when you're a senior, you're starting to think about the outside world. You're like, oh, I'm actually leaving here. I gotta, what's it gonna be like? They have questions about life and the world. But when you're a 9th grader, I kind of think of them as some of the most like trapped people in the world. And
So insular.
Well, they're so in the high school world.
Yeah.
It's everything. And if you think about it, when you're 14 years old, 4 years of your life, I mean, it's like, what, a third of your life practically?
Yeah.
Whereas 4 years of my life at age 36 is like a blink of an eye. It's a much smaller percentage. So when you're looking at 4 years at 14, it might as well be forever.
Yeah.
And they're stuck. You know, school sucks. They can't deal with it. They have people they don't like. They don't get along. They say, oh, Ma, I don't like school. I've got to go to different school. And it's like, shut up, get on the bus. But like a guy like me, if my life ever got that bad, or like any adult, I mean, you know, it would be difficult, but you could make the decision to just say, that's it. I'm quitting. I'm leaving. I'm moving away.
Moving to the woods.
Something else.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm going to just move across the country somewhere else. I can do that. I'm an adult. I can make that choice. But a kid, they're stuck for 4 years.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, also they haven't been in the real world yet. So their worldview is really small. And, you know, it's a maturity thing and it's a developmental thing. But I see that as like a really tough time, you know, to be going through all these changes and trying to figure out where you fit in and who you actually are and where you're comfortable is really difficult.
Like you're
So
14. What are taxes? What is the grocery store? How do
you
things
don't
work?
care. Yeah, that's not important. It's like, do people like me? Like,
Yeah, that's the biggest question.
am I a weirdo? Like, you know, what do I like? Who am I? All these like questions.
Yeah.
And I can remember going through that stuff at that age and trying to find out who I was. And I'm lucky that I found like music and art, and I was able to identify with that and kind of be in those groups of kids that had those sorts of things.
So is that why you like kind of bring that, if you do bring that into your classroom, like your passion for music?
Yeah, it's a big part of it. That I want to. I try to be like. I try to tap into as many things as I can because I know like not everyone's like me.
Yeah.
In fact, like probably most kids aren't like me. And you try to like bring all that stuff in, but also show that there's a lot of different things you can be into and ways you can identify yourself, and none is better than the other.
I wish people would have been more like upfront in high school, like at least on my end, like that there were more things to be into.
Yeah.
I don't think there's like enough people like represent like, hey, interests are cool. You need to have them. They help you like advance in the world too. They're important to like living.
Yeah, they are, and they help give you your unique characteristics. Like for me, I think like, yeah, that's part of like my focus is a lot of the creativity stuff. Like in my class, like you're going to be doing more writing, and you're not going to really take too many tests, and even like the reading is a little less focused than maybe in some other classes. But that's just kind of like where I think my strength is, and I think that, you know, they're going to get a teacher next year who might be totally different. And I think that's good. Like, sometimes I get the same kids multiple years in a row. And even if they like love my class and want to be there, like part of me is kind of like, you should see something else. You should get a different perspective just because there's lots of perspectives out there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can show you mine, but you know, you should see this other person too. And see if that's something that works for you. It's a weird time in a person's life though. It really is. And it keeps you fresh and thinking. And I've noticed that I think that my the generational gap thing is happening.
Oh no.
You know, like where I used to really when I first started, I was more like a high school student than a teacher anyway. I was more familiar with that world. And like, you know, as you get older and like the times change, it's like, oh man.
You damn kids.
Yeah, get off my property, kids. But their whole world with like just the social media, cell phone aspect is incredible and different. And
oh yeah.
I couldn't I don't know. Like, you know, if I got picked on in high school, like I could go home at the end of the day and not have to worry about it till tomorrow. But that stuff follows you now.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of it happens online even more so than in person.
And my little brother is in high school, and the way he uses the internet like shocks me. Just more how like literate he is in like what's cool on the internet than I was in high school. Like I didn't know how to use Twitter really at all. I didn't really use it, but now he's like all over it. Got a whole different experience.
I don't think Twitter was a thing when I was in high school.
It was barely a thing when I was in
I didn't have like a cell phone going through high school, and I can't even imagine how that would change, because you're right, like that totally like adjusts your psyche, and I mean, it's nice to have all that constant communication, but I think it can also be unhealthy.
Oh yeah.
Well, a lot of times when I get in the morning, it's early in the morning, and maybe the kids are like filing into their class. It's not even a class I teach, it's another class, but it's the room I work in most of the day. And I'll go in there, and you'll just see kids, maybe there's like 10, 15 kids in there, and every single one of them is in their phone. Mm-hmm. No one's talking to each other. And it's a crutch, and everyone does it. I mean, not just kids, but it's something like, if you're in a weird situation around people you don't know, it's very easy to just like go on your phone and act like you have something important to do, rather than like sit there and like potentially have an awkward situation with somebody. Because it's it's kind of scary, I guess. But I don't know. I think a lot of like the people I know and are close with, I had to get through that difficult, awkward situation to become their friends.
That's true. I wouldn't know Dan if he didn't talk to me.
I guess not. Maybe.
First time Dan ever talked to me, he started telling me about a Mac device he built about like 18 bandpass filters.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what you're saying, but it sounds interesting.
That conversation, right?
Yeah.
But then again, I guess we wouldn't be talking if we weren't on the internet all the time too.
That's right? Very true.
Yeah, it's a weird
it's a give and take,
double-edged sword. Maybe it's only weird for us, I guess, because we can remember time before it.
Yeah, that's true.
But when you grow up with it, it's just the way it is. Listen to us becoming old men before our very eyes.
We are. I'm still young, but I feel older.
Yeah, I feel older for this conversation.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Me too. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like a little kid too. When am I going to grow up?
I think that's good to take with you.
Well, there is a nice kind of childlike wonderment that young kids have, and the willingness to do things that sometimes when you get in your routine and you start getting kind of rigid with your life, you're not as willing to take chances with. So you guys have got plenty of things up here. You've got tutorials, music. Can I ask you guys, and I guess this is more for Pierce, about like just like some of the artistic stuff, like the GIFs especially are really nice that you guys do.
Yeah.
So do you have a background in like, is it graphic design or is it just something you've picked up on?
Yeah, like the graphic design stuff I've been into like since I was in high school, and I don't know, like I'm really big into like actually having a way to like output things. I think that's how I learned the best. So I mean, I've learned a lot just from having to make so many GIFs for patches and just like having the output be very high. You get really fast at it, and like there's been times where we wanted to make like made up patches GIFs of me, how to make patches GIFs by making a patches GIF, like a GIF of me making a GIF. But
nice.
Like the whole idea behind it is like, I think like the visual aspect of tutorials, like I'm a tutorial junkie in so many things. Like I watch all kinds of tutorials. So I think the visual aspect in a lot of ways is like, was just lacking. And I wanted like, and this is Dan's vision of having things be simpler and just sort of like putting the relevant information right in front of you in the most digestible way. And GIFs are a great way to do that, because like you see like the Facebook videos where you scroll down and like they automatically play, and it's sort of just like hits you right there and you're immediately interested. I think GIFs have that same effect, but they're a little bit more shareable and like more immediate, and you never need to hear like the audio from them to sort of get what they're saying. And yeah, I think it's just like making everything, focusing everything on being clean and just a very user-friendly kind of fashion. But it's like with the graphics there, I get to focus on minimalism and sort of like try new ideas and how those work with minimalism. Because like I don't like really draw that much like in the non-digital sphere, but figuring out how to like put things together graphics wise is very rewarding for me. I'm also big like into album covers and like video, so like the GIFs and the video sort of go hand in hand. And once we start making like actual more videos on YouTube about the tutorials, which is in the future plans, like I really want to play with structure and like how we represent multiple things on the screen. Because I did that one video where I was what was I doing? Oh yeah, I was making a song out of the samples. I was sampling myself and having like the overlay of the screen over like just a video of me from behind in the studio. I thought was like kind of an interesting way to represent like the environment that you work in and also showing Ableton on the screen at the same time.
Yeah, they're really nice in our ever diminishing attention span world.
Yeah.
You know, that you can just like, they're already playing.
Yeah, they're
Right.
just looping.
Just a few seconds long. And the looping part is nice because you kind of, if you missed something, you kind of watch it again and, you know, you don't have to do anything to see it again. And I think it really adds a nice, like, clarifying element to what is written and how all this stuff works. And like you said, the minimalism is really nice. It's just clean.
Yeah, especially if you're
point.
looking on mobile. Like a lot of times, I like video tutorials a lot, but I'm not in a position where I want to like stop and pay attention and watch a video and listen to what they're saying. I just want to like give me the highlights because I understand mostly what it needs to be. I just need a few answers. Like questions
I think that's exactly it. Like the design of the guides is really influenced by our own experience with tutorials and thinking about how people will realistically approach them. Like they're probably going to scan an article and they're probably going to not need to like watch every point that I try to make for a minute.
Right.
But there are going to be like small things they want to focus on or like see a couple times. And with a video, like it's really hard to scrub through or like a week later go back to the part that you maybe forgot about. But the articles are nice because they have those GIFs in there that you can just like snap to immediately and be able to skip past the things that are kind of irrelevant to you.
Yeah, I think people maybe they look at the GIFs first, and then if they need clarification, they'll read like the sort of like notes about it. Depends on what the tutorial is, but like I think a lot of times it's like something to grab you in and like you understand the idea, like at least somewhat from the jump.
Yeah, it's very quick to communicate a lot of information with the short, you know, I guess you call them videos or GIFs. It communicates a lot of words worth of information in just a few seconds.
Yeah.
And when I do my tutorials, I'm usually thinking like about my own attention span. I mean, when I see something on YouTube I want to watch, once it starts getting over like 3-4 minutes, I'm like, ugh, no.
Yeah.
Got so much to do.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I can't spare 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Like I have these like mental like, ugh. And I've tried myself to really be to the point as best I can. But right now I'm kind of having a little weird conflict in my head here, like these dueling aspects, because the video editing for me is a little bit of the more like painful part of the process. Because like, I mean, I kind of enjoy it, but it's not the thing I'm trying to do, you know, and it's just like one of the steps I have to take to get the work out there. So it's the bottleneck. It's the thing that slows me down because it's not the most exciting part, and it's not I don't consider that like the art of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I've gotten into or at least in my head, I've only done it really once now, but the idea of just like live streaming.
Oh yeah.
Where it's more extended, it's longer. But the thing I like about it, there's a couple things, because I just released the 150th, free Ableton Live pack. And I decided like I would try experimenting with live streaming on it. So I did the whole thing on the live stream. I had my
awesome.
samples of waterfall sounds that I got on my honeymoon. And just wanted to make instruments out of waterfall sounds. I thought that made kind of a cool white noise.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been sitting on these samples for a while and wanting to do this 150th pack. I knew that was going to be the 150th one just because I thought it was a cool idea. And I've just been waiting. And then I was like, you know what? Let's just do it all at once. You know, I'll do this live stream. I was talking to Ben Burns, and he's really big on live streams. He got some really cool stuff. He does like these 2-hour song challenges every week where he spends 2 hours live streaming himself making a song.
Yeah,
people
I really enjoyed his episode.
Oh yeah, he was great.
That was a good conversation.
Yeah, he was a great guy to talk to, and really left me with the idea that like I should be doing some more live streaming, because what he's doing is so cool with it.
Yeah, I liked the aspect of how he said he had people come on and they would kind of chat with him or give him suggestions while he was working on the music. I feel like that would be an interesting aspect for you and working on a tutorial of some sort.
Yeah, I've seen like engineers like I think like Jeff Ellis, one of the engineers for Frank Ocean. He like does some live streaming when he's like mixing, and it's a really cool thing with music production. It's kind of like, because you can sort of tune in at any time and anything can be going on, like because because it's like a longer process, and it's definitely becoming more of a thing. I'm down with it.
Yeah, there's something like kind of cool too, I think, knowing that like they're doing it now. And like, whereas when you watch a YouTube video normal, there's no interaction. There's no like, it's like often a polished, finished thing. But the excitement of the live stream, where maybe something can go wrong, or they're thinking about it as we speak, there's that conversational part, I guess, starts to come in again. And while I was doing that live stream, there were people that said like, that try this or that, or I like this sound, or it needs more of this or that. And it was fun to have that interaction. And towards the end, somebody said, okay, now you got to make a track. And I knew I had to be like done at like 7 o'clock. I had to stop and I had to get out of here. And it was like 6:53 or something, like make a track. I was like, oh,
lightning challenge.
All right, I'm going to do it. Yeah. So just really quickly threw something together. And I was just so happy that somebody said that and forced me to do it, kind of. And it was just like empowering. I was like, oh, I was able to do something,
Yeah.
It wasn't like, it's not going to win any Grammys, but it was like, I threw together an idea using these sounds real quick.
Yeah.
And it felt great. And I really liked that format. And then when I was done, I don't have to edit the damn video.
And it's just there, yeah.
It's just there. And then I just got to write it up and upload what I did. It was so much easier. And I feel like in that format, I can do it more often and put stuff out more. But it also kind of goes against my, oh no, this video is longer than 3 minutes. Because that video was like an hour and 10 minutes or something. So, I don't know. I guess I'll have to do a few and see what the feedback is. But I think I can be more productive in that world where I just take out that step of the editing.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like live streaming has that sort of quality of being very in the moment, and like it's different than watching like a video that's edited, just because I think like the intention of it is to be like represent everything and like the entire time. So I think maybe people look at live streams a little differently too, like when they're watching.
Yeah, I think it's a little more forgiving.
Definitely.
I know I am when I'm watching. It's like, oh well, they're.
It's like the true reality TV.
Yeah,
the most reality.
It is pretty incredible though when you think about it that we can do that even.
Oh yeah,
like, we can anybody can be like, I'm live here from wherever,
from Taco Bell.
Yeah. There's it's a really cool way to reach people in an authentic way, I guess. Where and I see that like kind of in our culture a little bit. There's definitely kind of throwback to like being more real. As much as like things have gotten so polished, like there's a lot of music that's lo-fi, that's like hip, and I always enjoy that. And I think didn't like Alicia Keys like say she doesn't wear makeup anymore, you know, just to like I think that's what my wife told me.
I think there's sort of like more of those movements coming along.
It's nice like to see like, oh look, she's just being a regular person, you know. And it's
I think maybe where all that came from was, I think like around the time computers came about, like now we had the ability to be more polished, and that was exciting for a little bit. And now people are like, okay, well, I'm a little bit tired of that now. Let's try something new.
Yeah, not
like,
real. It's fake.
Yeah, like it lost its sort of like allure of being new, and now it's just like this movement the other way.
You feel very disconnected from that, I think, where it's like it's not a real person anymore. It's just this, this polished thing. And so I'm kind of like happy to see that happening a little bit.
They're a little dirt on everything.
Yeah, and I think it's healthy for like young people too, because
Oh, yeah.
they're not always so aware that like, you know, what you're looking at is not the way the person really is, or and when you're young and trying to figure out who you are and comparing yourself to everyone else, you know, how do you compare yourself to Photoshopped like I don't know, Kim Kardashian or, you know, whoever, Brad Pitt or whatever it is, but like where their abs are like brushed in, and
the ludicrous abs,
know, the perfect lighting, and they're oiled up and photoshopped, and I mean, it's Did
you see the ludicrous abs picture? The rapper in his latest video, like they had like CGI abs on him, and everyone was like giving him shit for it. And
really?
then he comes out and like his defense is like, no, it was intentionally meant to look bad, and it looks really bad though. I don't know if it looks intentional, but it looks really bad.
That's so funny.
I guess it's kind of
check that out.
It's kind of the age-old Star Wars original trilogy versus the prequel argument, where like the prequels are so clean and like it doesn't look like a lived-in world, whereas
sterile.
Like what everybody loved about the originals was it felt like you could live like on Tatooine or wherever.
Yeah, those there's a big difference to that overall vibe, like where you got like the CGI characters, or even what they did with the as they like updated the old ones with like some of the Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah.
You know,
Terrible.
Look really weird.
Yeah, and I wasn't really aware of that stuff until the new movies came out, and my wife and I got like the DVD set. We wanted to watch them all six.
Oh, and they're all the
go
new
see the
ones.
seventh one, or whatever the order is, I forget. But all the controversy around like some of the touch-ups they did to the original film, and like you can't even really see the original film anymore.
You really can't. There's some really terrible additions, and like I mean everyone knows the Han shot first thing, but if you watch some of the scenes, they'll just like put a giant CGI monster like across the front of the screen where it literally takes up everything, and it's all like for the sake of it. I don't know if you've ever watched the Red Letter Media reviews of the prequel movies.
No.
You should definitely check it out, because I mean they're great video essays in their own right, and really funny too. But like the first time I watched them, I was kind of struck by how insightful they were about the creative process, and they talk about how George Lucas in a lot of these instances like destructively altered the original celluloid to make the changes he wanted to do, and they all just feel like so unimportant and so on a whim, and they kind of like go into leaving good enough alone, or how it's important to have or to not surround yourself by yes men, because they say like with the prequels no one wanted to tell George Lucas no, whereas if you hear some of his ideas from like the original movies, they're just terrible, like on par with some of the prequel stuff, and like he just had people around him who were like, well, that's not a good idea. But when they were making those newer movies, nobody wanted to say that to him.
After he became the legend that he is.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I highly recommend checking those out because I think they are really
We'll
insightful.
put that in the show notes. I got a couple things written down. We'll have to put in the links when we put this episode up. Yeah, like the thing with the like CGI characters in the original Star Wars, like, so we were watching these, and I'm like thinking, like, how did they do that back then? Before I'm aware that this is additions made.
Yeah.
I guess on one hand, though, there's like, people, are attached to the originals and they want to see it the way it originally was. But on the other hand, it's his movie.
Yeah.
Like, if he wants to screw around with it still, like, who are you to say?
But there's kind of an argument for that, though, too, because, like, a lot of people, because it is such a cultural phenomenon, like, people say it's really more the people's...
Belongs to the culture.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
even, like, George Lucas kind of famously testified in Congress when they were colorizing old black and white films, saying how, like, this thing already exists, like, it should be preserved for posterity. You can't, even if it's the original director, like, making these alterations, like, he shouldn't be allowed to do that. And then,
that's interesting.
ironically, like, that's what he had kind of become. He's sort of a tragic figure.
Well, that's another way to look at it. You can say, hey, it's his thing, but then at the same time, once you put your thing out, it kind of becomes everybody's thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, like you put out music, you might be about one thing, but then someone else hears it, they get a totally different thing out of it. And that's, the meaning is somewhere between the author and the reader.
Yeah, you can't take away like what someone derives, what someone's taking away from them. Like they do own their own feeling.
Yeah. That's actually something I find really difficult to teach my high school students. Like when you start talking about things like theme and message. And it took me a long time to realize this. It was probably just my own personal interest in music that helped me get there. But the idea that, like, maybe the author intended this or maybe they didn't, but the meaning is not like, as a teacher, I didn't get some stone tablet given to me that tells you what the theme of Lord of the Flies is.
Yeah.
It's all up to interpretation and to give them the power and understanding that they have the power to interpret things as they want. And if you got this out of it, it's totally valid.
Yeah.
That's what you got out of it. It's a difficult thing to teach. And it's, I guess, maybe interestingly in the case of George Lucas, where he sees the other people's work as almost this like historical document. It was this black and white movie. This is what it was, and this is what it meant to the people. And it's hard to understand what it might have meant to that particular generation that first saw it if you alter it. But then, on the other hand, he is able to do it to his own work.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting irony that you say. Yeah.
I think you brought up a great point though about whatever your interpretation is, it's valid. Because that was an important lesson for me in music, figuring that out. And like part of that was going to concerts and like going to bad concerts. And instead of just being like, I don't like this, I'm going to leave, it's like trying to figure out why I don't like this. And the kind of watershed moment for me, I went out and visited my friend Ingi, who's a really talented songwriter. And she releases music as Ings, and it's worth checking out. But I was out there and talking to her and her roommate, and I was kind of explaining how I don't really like instrumental music, because they were showing me some, and it's pretty wild stuff. I think it was like an offshoot of Death Grips. And I was like, well, I really don't like instrumental music that much. And I kind of went into my reasonings where it's like, I feel like, the musicality of it, the composition sort of has an emotion that it imparts, and then the lyrics are what, like the story that those like emotions apply to. And it's like you're losing a whole piece of that, is what I was trying to explain. And what he said to me was, when I listen to instrumental music, I'm just thinking about my life and like applying those emotions to things that I've experienced and like my own thoughts. So I'm kind of like, in some ways, the instrumental music is, rather than a soundtrack to the artist's story or words, it's like a soundtrack to my own thoughts. And that sort of like reshaped how I thought about like music beyond like just the instrumental music, because I guess any kind of song can soundtrack your thoughts that way, and whether you acknowledge it or not, it's happening.
I've had similar thoughts as a younger person, where instrumental music didn't really do much for me. Didn't really care. But then to like kind of understand, it's just a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different way of experiencing it.
Mm-hmm.
I bet like, as you're younger, you kind of like draw lines in the sand about like what you like, what you don't like. And I've at one point didn't like any music that had drum machines in it. Like, look at me now. And it's just like I don't know, some sort of like identity thing maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You say, well, this is the kind of person I am and how I identify my own tastes or something.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I totally feel that. Like you're like, well, this is like I'm not that weird. I'm not that avant-garde. I don't like
Mm-hmm.
this type of music. Like maybe it's like you have a different idea of the people that do like that music, and you just like feel like you don't belong.
Yeah, I guess everybody has like preconceptions and biases, but they come out in weird ways in art.
Mm-hmm.
And like that manifested the other day. I was at a band practice for, I guess we're more of like a traditional rock group with synthesizers, but our drummer didn't show up to practice, and we still needed to like go over the songs. And instead of, just
It's always the drummer, right?
yeah, sure. Well, instead of just playing, I just set up a quick drum machine in Ableton, and I just like played that to keep us in time. And I kind of liked the vibe of it. It kind of felt like, I don't know if you've seen those Radiohead videos that came out, the Paul Thomas Anderson ones, where they're just like playing some of the new songs, but it's just Johnny Greenwood and Tom York with a drum machine. And I think I was using the same drum machine, which I thought it sounded really good.
I like that one.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one. It has like a C in it.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one it is, but I know what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. But I was kind of saying after the practice, I was like, hey, I was kind of feeling that vibe. If our drummer, like, because we had not played with him up to this point, we kind of like went through a lineup change. Our show was last night, and our first practice was the day before.
Oh boy.
And this was 2 days before, where we're trying to arrange to meet this new drummer, and he didn't come. And I was like, well, if he doesn't show up at all, we can always just go with the drum machine, because it's kind of interesting. And the guy who like wrote all the songs, he was like absolutely not. I would rather not play a show than play with a drum machine. And I was like, man, like, and he's a pretty open-minded guy when it comes to music. And
I sort of liken that to like machismo. Like you're kind of like, or like, it's sort of like this masculine testosterone thing where it's like you're trying to like prove you're a real player or something.
Yeah. There's a lot of that in playing music, I think, where you want to show that you're capable and, a good player. And I've always had that with drummers a lot, where there has to be a fill at the end of every bar. And, my favorite drummer is probably Ringo Starr. Again, to go to the Beatles, they're a big influence, but he plays for the song.
Yeah.
It's not like about like, let's show you how good of a drummer I am.
Yeah.
And I think that's, as a songwriter, I care about that, and even as a guitar player, like I was never really too wowed by amazing guitar playing.
Mm-hmm.
Starting off, it was great to learn from some of that stuff, but it never really.
It's not that fun to listen to.
Yeah,
it's cool to watch.
There's definitely there's some people that are just incredible, and Jimi Hendrix kind of characters and whatnot. But even with Jimi Hendrix, though, I think he's a great songwriter. He's a great melody writer, and that's what I like about him more than anything. And even his sound manipulation too is cool. But to just like watch someone wail on a guitar, just I don't get too excited about that personally.
Yeah,
me neither.
I feel like
you respect it. It's great that you've practiced that hard and are talented like that. But
I very much look at like music in a song perspective, just because like that's sort of what the studio like is all about. is like making a complete work.
That's an interesting point. Like, do you feel like production, in the kind of modern sense, is that kind of immune from that phenomenon? Because I think of like a guitarist doing something like that. They're kind of like, it's only going to be interesting for someone who can appreciate the technical like side of that and is a guitarist themselves. But so there's music that guitarists play for guitarists, but is there like producers who produce songs for producers? Because I think of something like Flying Lotus, like that might be the closest thing, but I don't think that loses any appeal to like a non-producer.
In fact, it might be cooler because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, then you have an air of mystery there, rather than just like, well, I kind of know that you spent a lot of time practicing that.
Yeah. Well, I've there one of the things that I can appreciate about like a lot of like mainstream pop music is the production. Where I'm not really into most of that stuff, but a lot of times there's like some interesting production and just the cleanliness, even just of some of it is pretty cool. It's not really what I like to do myself, but I think a lot of times, in my opinion, like those are like kind of like the rock stars, or I mean, a lot of music now, it's just these singers and artists are like in one track, you never hear from them again.
Yeah.
But the production is sometimes the really interesting part.
I totally get that. Like listening to like we were listening to like Ariana Grande. I was showing Dan this Ariana Grande song that I really like, and like it's so interesting. I don't like Ariana Grande's fine. I'm not like a fan of her, but I'm a fan of like the team that is making her sound like so crisp and so clean. It's it definitely is kind of like, in a way, it's music for everybody, but I think I only appreciate that music because of like my like experience producing music.
Yeah, but I guess my point is like it would never go too far that like anyone would lose interest in it for the production being too good.
Like it still has, the appeal kind of only gets broader.
But if you're shredding too well on the guitar or like being too
okay,
then it does kind of it's a little off-putting.
Okay, yeah, because that affects the composition more, maybe.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. I was listening, I think this was on Darwin Gross's Art Plus Music Plus Technology. I think he was talking to Roger Lynn. And Roger Lynn with the Linstrument?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
That thing's crazy.
Yeah, it is. I actually got a chance to play it a little bit with Roger Lynn at the Brooklyn Synth meet, and it wasn't because like of me. He was just there, like showcasing it.
That's
in
like
this
the
little music shop.
Early sampler, right? Is that what that is? Like with the keyboard?
Well,
no.
It's like, so I don't know. When I bought a Push, I was like, this is going to be my instrument, and I'm going to have to relearn like how to play this as if it was like a guitar.
Oh,
I feel like this is another one of those things that's taking like controllerism to a new level where it's like this is kind of a world apart and it creates a new like expressive tool.
Oh, okay.
Is that about accurate?
Yeah, I'd say so. It's like a long rectangle, and it's got little. It's not even like separate pads. It's like one giant pad, but they're in little squares, and it's laid out like a guitar. But I think you can change the layout too.
Oh, I see. But I looked up a picture. I've seen this thing before.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm really interested in these controllers that don't feel like they need to be derivative of what came before. So, I mean, the Push, it kind of is playing off a lot of the things that, like, the other controllers that were made, but it kind of, it's not like, well, we need to have a keyboard because that's how people, like, input music.
Yeah.
There's
more ways to do it.
Yeah, Roger Lynn was like in the store, just like, here's my thing, and I'm
That's
here.
awesome.
It wasn't like an event for Roger Lynn, even. It was just the Brooklyn Synth meet, and it was his enthusiasm was awesome, and he was just playing it, talking to you about it, and a lot of fun. Just being a regular guy, and he was on that podcast, Art Plus Music Plus Technology, and one of the things he was talking about a lot was, he wants to hear like the virtuosic instrumentalist come back. You know, he's saying like in electronic music and modern pop music, like there's no guitar solo anymore. Like there used to be a guitar solo in every single song. It was just like, and now the solo comes in, and that's not the case anymore. And one of the things he's hoping to do with the Linstrument is to sort of bring that back. You know, just that like great playing, appreciation for that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I guess if you think about it, like there's no like solos in music anymore.
Yeah.
It's not like a thing we do. Whereas not that long ago, that was
like the pop sound.
Yeah. And you know, there's still people I play with where like, all right, you know, we're going to do this, verse, chorus, solo, verse, chorus. And like, it's just a given that like there's going to be a solo in there. Just because it's like part of a song.
Yeah, it's seen as like just like a bridge or a chorus or something.
Yeah, but that's like, I guess it's something that has stuck around in people that have been playing a little bit longer that's not in the newer music anymore.
I guess that's also a dangerous road to walk down, to make that too easy for people. Like I've really enjoyed using the Figure app. It's like something Propeller Heads made.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, it's really
one
fun.
Of the few apps that like I always come back to.
Yeah, and
so easy, quick.
I love just like putting it in the hands of someone who's never like touched a DAW or like has like played music at all, because within 5 minutes that they're making something that sounds like
a real thing.
Yeah, and I don't know, like as these tools develop and things become more easy where you don't need to have the background of like learning scales or learning to play, I think that's positive because it does like open up that world for other people. But man, the mountains of indistinguishable music that's gonna like result from that, it's gonna be hard to sift through. Maybe
there was some other thing. I feel like it was like some like guitar like instrument that you said that for, like where it's like it's essentially playing it for you, like sort of it seems like the goal in like the consumer market for music is kind of to like dumb things down to where you don't need to know anything. Like that's sort of where things are going. Like every other thing that comes out is like, okay, look how much easier this thing is now.
I think sometimes like I feel like I think of like software companies like Arturia. I think doesn't do that. I think Arturia is making good things like in hardware and software. Definitely. But then I feel like Native Instruments is definitely going down that path.
Oh yeah.
And like there's a venue in our town called the Blue Note, and they used to bring in like the best shows. And like if they were a pretty big touring band, they're probably going to come to the Blue Note. But these days they kind of just every night it's an EDM show, and they just get a DJ because it's so much more like reliable from like a financial standpoint. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of the music technology is following that trend.
Yeah, like they're playing into like DJs are kind of making money just because it's easy to book.
Right. Well, yeah, and I think that, and also around here, like there's some nice venues that they've put together, but it's almost always cover bands or like a DJ night where it's not even like an EDM kind of DJ night. It's just like, you know,
90s
DJ.
throwback.
Yeah.
I see that exactly. a lot.
Yeah, we get that a lot too. And I guess it's like, it's weird because at the same time that we're making all these things that make it possible to create more inventive music and to be more risky, it's almost like the reaction of
the consumer, the listener.
Well, I don't think it's the listener. I think it's more like the people managing all of this are becoming more risk averse because it's the safer stuff is so much more accessible. They don't have to take chances. But we as like musicians and artists are able to like take more chances from like our side. So it's a weird like butting of heads that's, I guess it's always been there, but with technology it's like changing a little bit. Yeah.
Well, it's when I look at like there's a couple like kind of larger scale venues that have shown up, and I mean it must cost a fortune to keep those places open.
Yeah.
And you know, the local band playing originals isn't always pulling in the crowd that they need on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
So it's much easier to get the like Alice in Chains cover band in the 90s night or the 80s throwback dance party
Yeah.
Dress up kind of thing that people will actually go to.
Yeah.
I wonder how you can create that sort of built-in audience for something that maybe you could say matters a little more.
Yeah.
Because I understand, like, from the business side, that it's nice to have something safe like that. But at the end, it's not really like the fact that it's the Alice in Chains cover band. It's the fact that there are Alice in Chains fans and they can count on that built-in audience. So I wonder if there's a way to like develop that for original music and unheard music. There was in town. There's someone who, or I guess she's from St. Louis. She runs some kind of like opera organization. She's like, it's really hard to get people to come out to the opera. But what we do is like partner with local businesses and make like all these different like cupcake factories. We'll make a special cupcake for this particular opera.
Yeah.
And there's a built-in audience for cupcakes, maybe more than opera. But people like that idea, and they didn't come out necessarily for the cupcake or for the opera, but the idea of putting this event together where there is this like built-in incentive like outside of the thing itself. I don't know if that's a good example, but I think there's probably ways for people to do that in original music that we kind of need to discover instead of just being like lost in despair.
There needs to be some innovation.
Yeah.
I guess that's a good example if it gets people out, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the venue cares about, just because they're a business and they're not bad people for it.
Yeah.
But I think we as like artists have to be more on top of like finding ways to do that rather than being like, yeah, our music's awesome.
Yeah. They want to find what people want.
Like we need to find a way to have a built-in audience.
Yeah, it's very, very tricky because there's a lot of awesome music and but that's not always enough. I guess, which is what we do with our little tutorials and stuff. It's not just that putting out the music is gonna get people to it. Because I mean, maybe you guys have had this experience where you decided, well, I'll put my music out for free, and this maybe 10 years old now, but like, put it out for free. People just download, and then like no one downloads it.
Yeah,
no one cares.
When the few people that do download it, I'm like, hell yeah, so satisfying.
Yeah, a friend of mine recorded some songs a weekend ago, and it sounded great. I was talking, I was like, yeah, it was really cool. He's like, yeah, man, I'm up to like 4 views now. And he's like, yeah, we had a laugh. He's like, but that video I put up of my puppy, that thing's tearing up my feed.
Well, what he needs to do is he needs to soundtrack the puppy video with his music.
Yeah.
The puppy is the built-in audience.
Right. Yeah, and he did just put up a video, now that you mention it, where his music was playing in the background and his dog was like chewing on his sweatshirt.
That's great.
But it's pretty funny, like how you can, I guess if you don't really have that love for just doing it for the sake of doing it, it can really break your spirits.
Oh, yeah.
You spend all that time and then, just your dog carrying your slipper around is way more entertaining for people.
Yeah, I guess it's just being conscious of that, because like as you start to make stuff, you obviously care about it a lot, and you're like, every detail, and it's like really special. But just being aware that like someone's gonna hear it from like the other side of the room while they're doing dishes or something, if they hear it at all, like finding those elements that make it more interesting. I guess it's kind of like what we did with the sample pack, like packaging the music with a sample pack of the album, but finding a way to offer something that's more interesting to a general audience. But I guess it's that same idea.
It's like you get something for listening to it.
That more than just listening to it, because we can listen to anything, and now we can travel through time and listen to the Beatles, and it's like how is our band competing against the Beatles?
Yeah, they want whenever they want.
Yeah, and even if you could make music that's, and forget about how we define this, but that's better than the Beatles. How the time the Beatles came out and where like that was like one of the few things you had to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you really listen to Beatles, the Stones, or you like jazz, and that's pretty much it, right? You know, like there's a few choices you got of different radio stations, and that's about it. Whereas now it is anything, every type of genre from every kind of artist in the world, and also the entire back catalog of everything that's been recorded.
Exactly. And you're not just competing against it from like a music standpoint. Like you said, like what if you made something better than the Beatles? It's like you're not just competing on music. It's also like their music plus their legacy against your music. And it's really hard to get people to choose to listen to something that you made unless they're like your friend.
Growing up and like hearing those songs as a kid, it takes you back, and like, you know, your new song doesn't have that whole life experience attached to it.
Mm-hmm. And that's hard because like some of that like classic rock is a couple generations deep now, so it's like, well, my dad listened to this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, right.
It's
I remember this when my dad used to take me to Little League, and you know, it's got that attached to it. You can't compete with that, you know.
So yeah, I guess it's more than just being like cynical. It's like you do have to offer something else because that music is offering something else.
Yeah, I think the cupcake idea is pretty cool.
I think when we were discussing like marketing and ideas when our band released our last album, we were like, I think I was like laying out a bunch of different plans, and I called that like the cookie method.
Oh yeah, you got to
like,
give them the cookie.
Yeah, like just in the sense that like we both like are around. We're in a college town, and on campus there's
What town is that?
Columbia, Missouri.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's like all these housing complexes that will try to get you to sign a lease because
Cookie.
yeah, so like, and it's not like sign a lease for a cookie, but it's like if you're walking past their little booth, they'll offer cookies in exchange for your email.
Yeah.
And it's like it's like worth it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. It's like, oh well, it's just an email.
It's like, well, there's a cookie. So it's like what I was saying was if you try to sell your music at like a show, like you get a certain amount of people that might be interested in buying it, but like everybody's interested in buying a cookie.
Yeah.
And cookies are pretty like affordable, especially since you can buy them in bulk. So it's kind of like the utility someone gets out of the cookie is far more than the like cost of it. And it's like, the utility is almost enough to make the purchase of the music worthwhile.
Yeah.
But hopefully they'll listen to the CD once they have it.
Yeah, package like I guess maybe that's the why baseball cards came with the stick of chewing gum.
Yeah.
You know, that stuff. It's kind of cool.
Well, we threw a party for the album release, and Dan made tacos for an incentive to share the album.
Yeah, if you shared the album, you would get a taco. And if you wanted a second taco, you had to find a friend who hadn't yet shared the album.
Yeah.
So we made a little pyramid scheme, and it was pretty successful.
Yeah.
So I think it could be scaled.
It definitely could be scaled. More tacos, more people, more shares.
That's funny. It's fun though, like, because then maybe you're building like that community around what you guys do. And that, like, you know, your show is an event. It's not just we're playing our music, but it's this like fun thing that goes on where it's more than just that music. It's more than just seeing your friend's band play again.
Right.
Like this time we're having the taco party. You know, who knows what else you do, but I think that's like a cool approach. You got to do something, right?
Yeah. And I guess up until like we just had this conversation, I never really thought of like why. But that idea of like, oh, it's their music plus their legacy and plus the past experiences with it. Like those are the extra layers on top. Or like
they own their feelings.
There
Just
you
like
go.
people own their Star Wars feelings.
Yeah, right.
Wow, all of these circles coming around.
Intrinsic value, is that what we call it?
Yeah, I think you could say that.
I guess our point is like you need to offer something beyond the intrinsic value.
Yeah.
Because we all know like we produced awesome music and people are going to like it if they listen to it.
Yeah.
But getting them to listen to the music instead of watching the video of the dog, that's difficult.
Yeah.
So you gotta have them
The video
listen
of
to the
dog
music
with
while you're watching. Yeah.
Right, slip it in there.
Just yeah. It's like
That's
licensing.
funny.
Yeah.
Like commercials break songs now instead of DJs.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Remember when that was like the least cool thing in the world you could do? Put your song in a commercial and
That was
have
pretty,
it
there's
with
some
a
cool
product.
songs and commercials though. Like
There are, yeah. It's
I think commercials stepped up their game as far as like showcasing cool music. Like when they started to become tastemakers, people cared about like it stopped looking so bad maybe.
Or maybe the cynical standpoint is it was like once they needed to cut their costs significantly, they had to turn to more underground
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
Because like I used to skateboard a lot, and I would watch a lot of skate videos, and they always had the best music, and that's kind of what got me into music. Because
yeah.
like they can't afford anything but like deep underground
Yeah.
stuff, and so maybe commercials, as costs become tighter, they have to turn to like quote better music.
Yeah.
Because if you look at
Yeah.
like marketing materials for movies, and you know like that Thor trailer just came out, and
Oh, and they used like the Led Zeppelin,
Yeah.
they used Immigrant Song.
like
yeah.
every single movie trailer now has to have like a reinterpretation of a classic rock song, and it's because they can afford the licensing fee. But like,
Yeah.
what if they couldn't? Would we get something that's more interesting? Because it always turns me off when it's like, okay,
Yeah.
like okay, so you did Bohemian Rhapsody, cool.
Yeah.
But what if they like couldn't turn to those like really expensive things? I think then you start to get more interesting music.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's like a weird change that happened somewhere. I can remember to me like two examples stick out. There was like a Volkswagen song with the Nick Drake tune in it.
Oh yeah,
Like just driving around. Do you remember that one?
yeah. I don't remember
And-
which song it was.
Yeah, I kind of forget too. But it was one of the first times I ever heard Nick Drake actually.
I think it was one of his less sad songs.
Yeah, it had it's like kind of like a bittersweet vibe, you know.
Nick
that
Drake's
fit
an interesting figure, given like what we had just talked about, how like the intrinsic value of the music might not be enough to sell it. Because 99% Invisible, they're like a really good podcast. If you don't listen to them, they did a 3-part series on his life, and it was really interesting because like he obviously makes incredible music, but it just wasn't selling, and the label was like promising him like fame, and he was just like, why isn't anyone wanting to listen to my music? I thought it was really good, and I think
Yeah.
he ended up killing himself.
I think
Kind of a
so.
sad story,
Yeah.
but I think there's also a lesson in there. But
Yeah, it reminds me of another one, documentary. I think it's called "Waiting for Sugar Man"
oh yeah, I've seen that.
I've seen that.
with Rodriguez.
Mhm.
that was a really good one. He's got great songs, but he, for some reason, just didn't connect.
Well, he didn't offer a cookie.
Where's his cookie, right?
Yeah. He's called the Sugar Man. I mean,
Sugar Man.
It's built in.
Wait, what was the
Yeah.
what was the other commercial that you said?
Oh, Sting. He was selling like Jaguars or something
Oh,
like
wow.
that, and he had that like "Desert Rain," I think was the song.
I
But like
remember.
the whole song was in the, and he's just like riding in I think it was a Jaguar or something like that.
One that
but,
sticks out to
like-
me is the Kindle Bibio Lovers Carvings. Because
Uh-huh.
like Bibio is like a pretty prolific producer, but like I don't think anyone knew who he was until like just his guitar lick got in the Kindle commercial, like when it first launched. And because it's like the most beautiful, like catchy thing that ever, like it's like one of those things where like you immediately like go to your computer and like, what is the Kindle song? And then
Right.
that's how I knew about him from then on. It was really cool.
I wonder if that's what happened with like young folks. Because when I went to New Zealand,
Oh,
like
yeah.
New Zealand Air, every single time you boarded the airplane, and because like the way travel is over there, like it's a lot of interconnected flights. Every time you'd board up a plane, they'd show you the same video with young folks playing.
What?
And I think I heard this, and like
weird.
even in all the like the restaurants, they would play it, and I think I heard the song like upwards of 15 times when I was
Yeah.
over there. It
That
became
whistle
a meme
melody is
really
definitely
fast.
in like a lot of commercials too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess
whistling in general.
Yeah.
like, you hear
Yeah.
a lot in commercials.
come around. Maybe
There's a
it'll-
great podcast on that song on Song Exploder.
Oh yeah,
I've
we
been
love
meaning,
Song
I've
Exploder.
been meaning to listen to that episode, but I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, it's cool like that. I think they might have said the whistle was like gonna be replaced.
Yep.
But then they were like, nah, it's too cool.
But yeah,
great.
now everybody uses whistles. Maybe a whistle pack.
Well, all right, there it is.
It's a race. I'm doing it first.
We need the whistle pack.
Maybe we'll join forces on this one,
Yeah,
and
that'd be
There you go.
we'll each
That'd be
find
nice.
like 10 people to record whistling
He can get his
different
class.
notes.
He can get his class to whistle.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, I suck at whistling too.
yeah. I can't whistle,
really do that.
but I might be able to make a single tone, and if I can do that, I've got simpler.
I'm not very good.
Yeah, might have to
I'm
like
weak.
be some kind of crazy multi-sample thing.
We need a children's choir, whistle choir.
Or maybe you make a max patch that live streams, like it'll connect to someone's app who can whistle, and it's like the Uber of whistling. So
Uber
so when you
session
need
musicians.
some whistle on your track, you load up this max patch and it live patches you in to someone's app who can whistle, and they'll whistle your tune.
Incubator over here.
I guess you could take that a step further and have like everyone's got their
An
own
instrument.
home recording studio now. So session musicians, what if you could just like?
Need this sound.
I think
Collab.
an entrepreneur could make that a reality.
Collab space.
Like
yeah, that's a pretty cool idea.
instant connections, because you can do that with a lot of teaching now. You know,
Oh, yeah.
like I think Google has a thing where you just
Find tutors. And stuff.
yeah. But like, what if you just like, oh, I really need like a really good guitar player, and I've got like $30, and instead of like having to like go to a proper studio or like fly them out, it's just like, well, what if I just like got them right away?
I'm online.
Yeah, and
Play
here's
guitar.
your tune.
And add stories to that, where you can see what they do throughout their day.
Yeah,
Stories
That's
on
a-
everything.
Wild idea.
We're a tech incubator over here too.
oh yeah.
That would
We did
change
develop.
collaboration like
We
crazy.
developed a dating app that connects
yeah.
people based on their music interests.
Well, we didn't actually develop it.
Well, yeah,
we thought about it though.
But we developed the idea. And that's what we do.
Nice. That's fun. Do you guys have something on your site that was like the most popular thing, the biggest hit?
I think that was the Radiohead pack. Just because it got shared around so much.
That was
Yeah,
the
I saw that on
that was
Create
very
Digital Music and
deliberate, built-in audience type thing.
yeah.
Yeah, because we talked about what kind of artist might be appropriate, and we talked about like D'Angelo, who might still be in the works.
Yeah.
But I just thought Radiohead because, I mean, it's a really useful pack because, you know, they have so many polyrhythms, and it's an interesting idea to apply a groove maybe in like 7/8 to your 4/4 song, because then the accents and the timing is adjusted for the alternate time signature, and you kind of get a polyrhythmic feel even in your like 4/4 song. So I think it's a really like good pack and like really useful. But I think because it like the Radiohead title on there, I think that was the
Right.
cookie in this
Yeah,
instance.
yeah. Because people love
Yeah,
Radiohead. They already do.
If anyone listening doesn't know what it is, Patches put out a downloadable pack of Ableton Live groove files, which you can take basically the groove of any song, the feel of any drummer, and apply it to your own beats and your own instrumentation. So it's almost like quantizing to the grid, except the grid is now redefined as whatever the groove of the song that you're extracting the groove from. So they took every Radiohead song ever, right? Like every
Yeah.
recorded
Yeah.
one from
Well,
the main albums at
I
least.
think there's like weird B-sides. It was like every studio album.
Every studio album. Yeah. So that's a lot of songs and a lot of work. And it's so if you hear a Radiohead song you like the feel for, try dropping it on your track and you'll get like the kind of groove and vibe of that drumming.
Yeah, I mean,
Which
it's
is-
not perfect. Like, I want to
Yeah.
sound like House of Cards. Like, it's not going to make your song sound like House of Cards, but it does. It definitely imparts some character,
Yeah.
and it definitely humanizes it. And they're all
Right.
useful, but it's like slightly more arbitrary than I'm going to capture this Radiohead vibe exactly.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would listen to any other song with the groove and be like, "That's the groove."
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we did have a chat about like the legality of that.
A lot of people were bringing that up. Like, can you copyright a groove? And
Yeah,
I'm like,
a couple people did.
obviously not.
I mean,
feel like
there
this
was
is
that
not-
Robin Thicke thing, like where they took.
Oh yeah, I went to a panel on that in New York actually.
Yeah,
Oh, expert
What's
witness.
that?
Oh, it says they were saying like
was it Blurred
just
Lines? And
yeah,
a
it was
Marvin Gaye
blurred
song?
lines. Just kind of
Okay,
sounds like this like the beginning in this Marvin Gaye song. Just like they just in generally kind of sound similar because they're similar genres.
But they specifically mentioned the groove, which is interesting.
I don't know if they were using like that's what the expert witness said. Like he's a musician guy, but their expert witness was like not as like technically skilled, and he said she was using a lot of terms that weren't actually like musically like they weren't. It wasn't like actually what those terms meant like when they're in their case. But like the jury didn't know.
Yeah, I do remember hearing something about that. I don't think I ever read into it, but
it's still ongoing.
That's an interesting.
Apparently,
that's a complicated issue, especially with like sampling, because like even when you go back and like I think George Harrison's "My Sweet Lord" is like a really famous example of a lawsuit. If you listen to the song they say he ripped off, it really isn't that similar. And it's like crazy to see like how similar songs are now. There's a site, I think it's called like soundslike.com or something like that. And you can just like type in a song and it'll pull up a song that sounds almost identical. And there's some like Simon and Garfunkel songs that I think there's a Bastille song that sounds exactly the same. It's crazy. And I guess that happens when like there's so much music. But there's a really great episode of Vsauce, if you ever watch that YouTube channel.
No.
He talks about like, will we ever run out of music?
Oh yeah.
That's a good one to put in the show notes because it definitely sparks some discussion and conversation over like what actually distinguishes music from each other when we're using the same scales and everything kind of sounds similar. And he has this wild figure of like, when you look at the storage capacity of a CD and how it stores like using bits and how many bits it can store, it's like such an insanely large number. And he lays out the figure, but it's something like if you look at how many water molecules there are on Earth, it's like 1 times 10 to the like 18th or something. And then he says like all of the hydrogen atoms in the universe are like 1 times 10 to the 60th. And like and then he's like all of the atoms in general in the universe are like 1 times 10 to the like 90. And the scale isn't like growing that much because it's just that exponential. And then he says how many different like combinations you can put on a CD is something like 1 times 10 to the 60 million. It's something insane. And he goes on to say how, that contains like everything that every sound that could ever be made, every conversation you had with your parents when you were young, every conversation you didn't have with your parents when they were young, because that's like the nature of waveforms and bits-based storage. And it's kind of insane. And like, I guess that's what all of the Vsauce videos are like. But it's cool that there's one about music in particular. It's worth checking out for sure.
Yeah, I'll get that in there. Insane. That's wild stuff. Who knows, right? I guess when you take like a song, I guess My Sweet Lord would be a good example, but it's pretty like basic. I don't mean that in a bad way, but like it's not overly complicated structure or overly complicated melodies. And it is like I for me personally, like I've gotten further and further away from like this idea of like ripping off other songs, and that like everything owes something to everything else.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen Kirby Ferguson's "Everything Is a Remix."
That sounds pretty familiar.
I think I even put it in the intro to your manifesto.
Yeah, maybe that's where I know it.
If you haven't checked it out, you should, because he goes over a lot of these ideas where, like, synthesizing different, like, how would you say it, like, things you've experienced or just like reinterpreting things. That's part of everything.
Yeah.
And then it's just like
nothing is original.
Yeah, and it's not really meant to be, and it really can't be. And I think it's a 4-part series, and it's really interesting because it spends a lot of time on movies and music, but then it gets into how like that same idea applies to biology, where like evolution is taking the best ideas that came before it and is synthesizing them into new things.
Yeah.
and it's like unavoidable, but then copyright laws have gotten increasingly like away from their original intent, which is to encourage that creativity. And you have companies like Disney pushing those laws further and further, where it used to be like, we just want to make sure that you have incentive to make something that's sort of new.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like, you have like patent trolls that go around, and we've even been victims of this. Like, we put out a song. You want to tell the story?
Oh yeah. So, like, we have a song called Bobby Valentino. That's the name of the song, not the name of the band. The band is Mons Blanco, but like we have a video on YouTube. We put a lot of work into like making this music video, and this guy in England, he has the trademark for Bobby Valentino, but trademark only is about services being performing under, or like services being offered. And since this, like, the name, where it's just the name of a song and it has nothing to do with him, it's not inspired by him in any way, like, he keeps going, like, on YouTube. He's just like, every time like he sees it again, he'll like tell YouTube to take it down. YouTube will take it down, then like they'll realize it's not a trademark infringement, and then like put it back up. But like, I don't know why it doesn't store in there.
Yeah, because then he just flags it again. And
yeah,
there's an R&B singer.
Yeah, he
like
was
Bobby
much
Valentino.
bigger than this, than the Bobby Valentino who owns the trademark, and he like in 2007 made him like change his name.
Yeah,
to
he was
Bobby
on like
V.
a Lil Wayne song, and
yeah,
now he goes by Bobby V because of this guy, and then this guy's coming after us because we use the Bobby Valentino name. But it's I can imagine how stifling that can be when you have people who just like are looking for ways to profit, because I think this guy has a history of going around and just like
that's how he makes money,
making money
music.
Like lawsuits.
He doesn't make good music. He just makes money off owning things in the eyes of the government.
Wow, that's wild. That's one way to make your career, I
Yes.
guess. Bothering patches.
Yeah.
Bothering us out here.
Anyone listening? Wow. So I'm trying to do like a couple questions here that I ask everybody.
Okay.
And so far I've asked a few people and forgotten to ask a few others, but I want to ask you guys while I got it in my head. And one of the questions is, so you guys have really, made a name for yourselves out there. I see your work all over the place getting shared. Ableton is always retweeting you guys, and you're getting your work in other people's music and all of that good stuff. And you seem to be really full steam ahead with this, releasing lots of stuff very consistently. And my question is, can you attribute that success to any one particular thing, or maybe it's a philosophy or work habit or way of thinking? Is there anything, maybe some bit of wisdom maybe to offer to others that are trying to move forward and stay consistent, that kind of thing?
I think we touched on something similar, where it's kind of like we always sort of, in one way or another, we sort of make the stuff that we do with the intended audience in mind, like from their perspective. Whether that's recording the shakers because I knew I wanted it, and if I want it, probably a lot of other people want it. And how do I want to make this pack for me? Because I'm not making this pack for the audience. I'm making the pack for me, so I'm making it the best it can be for someone who's actually going to use it. So anyone else that's actually going to use it is going to find those same advantages. And I think the same thing applies to the tutorials, how we were talking about how, like, we know people are going to, like, skim through what we write and maybe, like, download a GIF to their computer or, like, bookmark the article to return to later. And they're not necessarily going to, sit down and read it like a book and go over everything carefully. And designing it to, like, best be consumed that way, I think helps us to keep the things that we make relevant. And I mean, even, well, I don't know, did you have anything to add?
My take, from my point of view, I think a big thing to focus on is like how something looks matters. Like, aesthetic is a function in so many ways, like it's a function of like how like easy it is to see something. Like it's how they're consuming it. It's like the face of it, and there's so many things that like just the look of something can tell you about it. Like whoever's reading it, like it can sort of convinces them of something and like legitimacy. It really says a lot. So I think just like putting a lot of effort into how you're presenting your ideas, I think is my big like thing.
Well, I think that for me personally, the idea of like making something that I want, that I'm going to use, is pretty much how I think of everything I do. And because my kind of to sort of ensure that what I'm working on is successful, at least if no one else cares, no one else downloads it, no one buys it, whatever, I'm going to have something that I didn't have before.
Yeah, totally.
You know? So I have it, so that's cool at least. It's not a complete loss. And about the presentation, that was certainly one of the things about your site that really struck me, you know, just looking at it. It's really nicely laid out. The graphics are great, and the presentation is easy to follow. The core concepts are distilled nicely in quick GIFs often, but also just, just simple. Like your egg shaker loops icon is just an egg, and it says egg shaker loops, and it's easy. It's simple.
Yeah.
I always like to think about minimalism, but I think a lot of times I wind up not doing it right.
It's definitely a battle.
Yeah, and I think part of that plays into the idea of like us wanting these to be like definitive packs. It's not like
we don't want to play too close to someone.
Yeah, like rough and loose, bright egg shakers. It's like, no, these are just the egg shakers.
Yeah.
Hopefully you don't need any other egg shakers unless you want to get really particular.
Your hi-hat pack is the hi-hat pack.
Exactly.
Right, not just like closed hi-hats from these 6 particular drummers.
Yeah.
Whatever it was that you guys did. Which is cool. So it's very clear when you look at your stuff like what it's going to be. And that's a big help. And in the world of the internet where there's so many places to go and so many things to get, it makes it easy to see what you're looking at.
Yeah.
So I think I can agree with that from, an outside perspective, that's something that has kept me coming back, those 2 things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, guys. Well, we've been going for a while here. It looks like we're getting near the 2-hour mark.
Oh.
This might be the record now.
Oh, damn.
Have to check, but it was really nice talking to you guys.
Yeah,
And,
you too.
You too.
Lots of great philosophical stuff going on, and just again stuff that I think comes through on your site, but it's really nice to verbalize it and hear the backstory about why you do what you do. So I appreciate your time very much.
Well,
appreciate your time. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, definitely.
Very
I've
fun.
definitely been enjoying this, so I'm glad that you're like keeping up with it.
Do you?
Well, thanks. That means a lot for me coming from you guys.
When is this
as a,
episode gonna air?
I don't know. I've been pretty busy with doing podcast interviews this week. I'm on vacation from work,
Oh, nice.
so I've been doing one almost every day. So I think I'm backlogged about 3
Awesome.
now with this one, which is cool. Yeah, but I figure maybe within a week or so.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
right now it's April 11th, so I'm hoping, I try to get them out pretty quickly, but I also want to make sure I get like my show notes right and
Yeah.
things like
Right.
that.
Yeah. I mean, I'll see it when it comes out, and I'll share it around.
Oh yeah, I'll let you guys know. Of course, I'll send you an email and all that. But yeah, I would say like a week
Sweet.
is a good estimate.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. And,
Yeah, cool.
And Pierce and I are probably going to be moving out to New York within
Nice.
some time,
Yeah, you
so we'll
mentioned
definitely
that.
have to link up and maybe work on
Yes.
some tunes or something.
Yeah,
I don't
that'd be
know.
fun.
Absolutely, that'd be a lot of fun.
Cool.
Do some show or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. All right, so we'll say our little show goodbyes now. And again, this is Dan and Pierce from patches.zone. A really, really awesome site you can use for getting sounds and samples, Ableton Live tutorials and packs, and a lot of stuff too. The manifestos are great, regardless of, I think even if you're a musician, just it's very philosophical as far as creativity goes. And lots to learn, and even if you're into web design, it's a cool website just to look at. So patches.zone. And thanks, Dan and Pierce. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, have a great day, everyone. Take care.